And joining me now is Jamil Jaffer. He's the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason University. Jamil, do you think Iran has enough of an incentive to come to the table and make a deal by this deadline?
Well, the real question, Ike, is what does a deal like that look like? Iran should have every incentive to come to the table and make a deal. They've been pounded by U.S. and Israeli airstrikes now for weeks at a time. But they also recognize that the U.S. might be backing down. They realize that their closure of the straits has been successful, putting pressure on the president. The president has demonstrated that he feels under pressure. His threats and his ramping up of the threats demonstrates that he feels the pressure. So the question is, how does Iran view that? Do they see the threats seriously? Are they concerned about what more damage the U.S. could do? And are they willing to negotiate at this point? They haven't shown that willingness yet. We'll see if anything changes in the next few hours. But it doesn't appear that the president's threats have moved them enough to get them to the table to get the kind of deal that the United States wants to see, which is a significant deal, not just around nuclear capabilities, but around ballistic missiles and around their support of terrorism in the region, which are the real problems with the Iranian regime and have been for many, many years.
So what do you make of the impact this might have on civilians in Iran, both from a humanitarian standpoint and the U.S.'s standing amongst our allies?
Well, I think in terms of the U.S. standing amongst our allies, this could be very damaging if, in fact, we go after civilian infrastructure that has no tie to the war effort and to Iran's ability to maintain its effort to fight a war against the United States. That being said, I actually think that some of the conversations that we've been having earlier might be a little off in the sense that you can hit bridges and power plants if they have ties and significant enough ties to the military complex of a state that you're in conflict with. And so, the question becomes, how much damage does it do to civilian infrastructure? How much damage does it do to civilians? Does it undermine our support? Which, let's be candid, the Iranian people do not want this regime in power. They've not wanted this regime for a significant amount of time. You've seen the protests there. But could this turn the tide actually in favor of the regime? We obviously don't want to do that either. And so it's really important to calibrate whatever we do to focusing on military targets, military infrastructure. And to the extent you are hitting these capabilities, you're hitting them with a very clear aim at undermining their infrastructure and not doing damage to the civilian population. That only undermines the U.S.'s ability to continue to prosecute this war, both with our allies and with the Iranian people who clearly don't like this regime.
So explain to me, what are the broader foreign policy implications if the U.S. carries out this attack tonight?
Well, look, I think it all depends on how the attack is carried out, Ike. If, in fact, the attack is a doubling down of what we've done thus far, going after military infrastructure, going after the leadership, trying to take out more leadership targets, and maybe hitting some targeted infrastructure to make a point, but not significantly damaging the ability of civilians to survive and live their lives in Iran, 93 million people in that country, only about 1 million under arms, but still an important million that you want to target, then I think actually it simply continues the conflict. It doesn't change the dynamic fundamentally. If, however, this is sort of ending of a civilization as the president has threatened, or, power plant day where you're taking out power plants all around the country, that could be a real problem in the sense that it may actually strengthen the support of the regime. It might undermine our allied support, and it could really damage us a large scale. I don't think that's where the president ends up. I think he's using a lot of rhetoric that I understand and acknowledge is hugely problematic. At the same time, if he goes down that road, it could be very problematic for the country. I don't think we're going to end up there.
What's the best case outcome tonight?
Best case outcome, significant. Well, Iran backs down early. That's unlikely to happen. So given that, significant strikes against the regime again that continue to undermine their military capability, undermine their ability and willingness to fight, and ultimately the Iranian regime coming to the table, being willing to give up their weapons, their nuclear weapons programs, and efforts to create enriched uranium, and giving up their support of terrorism, which they've done now for the better part of 4 and 5 decades here in that region.
All right, Jamil Jaffer, thank you for that analysis.